Hey everyone, Sawmill Charlie. Well, it's early November and the temperature is getting cooler, and it's time for me to implement the third part of my mite treatment program. To recap what I've done so far, in mid-August, I did a Formic Pro treatment. The temperatures were 80 degrees or slightly less, and it was low humidity for about 2 weeks, so I took the opportunity to apply Formic Pro. In September, I applied Aprovar strips to all my hives, and they were on for 6 weeks, and I took those strips out on October the 15th. It's now early November. The temperatures have gotten much cooler. Today it won't get no more than about 50 degrees. I like to apply oxalic acid around 48 degrees to 50 degrees where the bees are still in the hive but they have a loose cluster. So the third leg of my treatment program is oxalic acid, and I will apply that at least twice a month in November, December. If the weather temperatures are good enough, as far as being around 48 degrees in January, I will also apply it then, and also in February. So I wanted to go over with you today on how I set up my hives and how I apply the oxalic acid vapor. Now here I have a demonstration nuke hive. I use screen bottom boards. I use coroplast strips or plastic cardboard to close up the screen bottom boards. My bottom boards have rails in here for the coroplast to slide in. So I slide the coroplast in. Now I make sure that this is cleaned off. If they've been used, I wash them off. And then after I do check them for varroa mite drops, then I scrape them off prior to the next treatment. So I slide this in. Then I've made up these wedges where I put them in the corners here in the back of the hive, and I have a shim here representing the hive stand that the hive sits on, and I take these wedges and I put it between the hive stand and the chloroplast board in each corner, and that way it holds the chloroplast tight to the top of the bottom board, which reduces leakage of the oxalic acid vapor. I also drill a 1/4 inch hole in the back of my bottom board around that rim that the box sits on, so I can stick my Pro Vap 110 oxalic acid vaporizer in nozzle, so it'll blow the vapor up into the hive. And then also here is another 10 frame board. Of course it has the rails, and then you just slide the chloroplast in, and I do the same thing for putting the wedges in each corner. Now it's more important, more so for the 10 framers, to put them on each corner, both front and back, because of the width of the chloroplast, where you might have more leakage because it bows down slightly. The nukes, because they're narrow, a lot of times I'll put one of these in the front, right in the middle, just to push up the chloroplast, and then put the two in the back in, far as keeping a better seal. And then of course use the oxalic acid vaporizer in the hive. Also, let me turn this around. This is the front of the nuke, of course, and of course here is the front of the 10 frame hive. I've made up some blockage material here that I use. All it is styrofoam insulation board. They're 1.5 inches thick, and I make them 1.5 inches by 1.5 inches square. And then what I do is I make them enough just where they're a little oversized as far as the distance between your bottom board on these edges here. Now you'll have to measure that because all these bottom boards are slightly different. And then I will slide that in and put that in front of the entrance, and that way there's no vapor that comes out of the hive out of the front. Same thing with the 10 frame hive here. Put the insulation board in front to block the entrance and keep all the vapor as much as possible. I try to keep probably 95% of the vapor. At probably around 98 I'm successful. You might have some leakage, but it really does prevent the leakage when it comes to the wedges and the insulation board here. Okay, I want to go ahead and show you what I use to vaporize my oxalic acid. About 5 years ago, I bought a Pro Vap 110. It uses electricity. I use a Honda generator right here. It's a small suitcase model. This year at Hive Life Conference, I went ahead and bought the new pre-measure applicator. It comes with the lid that goes, cap actually, that goes on top of your heater chamber. It has a hole in it, and the hole is tapered, so you put this on your unit. Then it comes with this applicator, and what you do is, I've put my oxalic acid in an old peanut jar, and there's the oxalic acid. You jam this into the acid, it fills up this tube, and then you put the applicator into the tapered hole. Of course, you're going to put it inside the back of your hive, and all you have to do is push the plunger down, and it makes sure that it pushes all the oxalic acid right to the hot iron inside, and then it goes immediately to vaporization. I find this to be really good because the original caps, where you had to fill them up with a little scoop, when you turned the unit upside down and then right side up, and it's supposed to drop onto the hot iron, a lot of times the oxalic acid was sticky and it would stay in the cap. Sometimes you'd have to tap it, and even with that, it would not hit the hot iron. So this is more of a positive way of putting the oxalic acid right onto the hot iron. And I find it to be a lot more faster as far as going from hive to hive using this applicator. Now I've turned the unit around here. This is the back of the hive. I have my hole right here. It is a 1/4 inch hole that fits my tip of the Pro Vap. And then you can see that I have my coroplast right here. All I do is I put the wedges here on each corner. And then when I've got my unit ready, I put the applicator on, filled with oxalic acid, stick it into the back hole, push the plunger, and now it's vaporizing the hive. And then I watch the thermometer numbers here, temperature numbers, and when it goes down and stops and then it starts to rebuild temperature, I know that the vaporization is completely done and I'm able to bring this out. The next thing is an absolute must. You must wear a respirator, and you must buy one. Do not use the little paint mask. Buy this $50 to $60 respirator. Make sure that the filters that come with that respirator are rated for organic acid. 3N makes one. Do your research. Make sure that you get the proper respirator. This stuff will damage your lungs, if not even kill you. So don't ever use an oxalic acid vaporizer without using a respirator. Now, what I want to do is I want to check the mite drop after vaporization, and I'll come back in about 24 hours to 48 hours and pull the chloroplast board out of the hive, and I'll just do a more or less a glance across it and see how many mites have dropped onto this board. Now, this chloroplast board, or sticky board sometimes people call it, it is not an accurate way of measuring the mite load in your hive. For me, since the temperatures have gotten colder, I do not want to break my hives open and break the propolis seal between the boxes. So what I want to use this for is a general idea of the mite load in my hive. Last year I had one nuke that it looked like somebody took a pepper box full of mites and just poured it on this chloroplast board, which was, thousands of mites. I didn't sit there and count them. I just looked at it and say that's way too many mites by just visualizing the board. The other hives around that hive, they might have had 15 mites on the chloroplast board after the first treatment. And that's just glancing across this board and sort of quickly counting the mites, because there's not that many that you can count 10 or 15 or 20 mites, which is not too bad of a drop for that hive. Now, what I did was, in that instance from last year, I treated that hive 4 times, and by the 3rd time, the mite drop had reduced down to only about 6 or 8 mites, and that took care of the issue. So that's what I do with these chloroplast boards. Every time I want to oxalic acid vaporize the hive, then I clean these boards off, put them back in, vaporize the hive, and then come back in a couple of days and check just to see what type of mite drop. So that's what I do for my 3rd part of my mite treatment. Hopefully you will have success this year in getting your hives through the winter. So until next time, please like, subscribe, click the notification bell, share my videos with your friends, and have fun with your bees.